Sound on. Microphones up, so just them.
I was gonna shake off around. That's good.
Yeah, right.
Okay, it's just.
So if I know it wasn't selling on sale.
Here it's later.
Oh, please.
But I've always done.
Take their seats. Go ahead and call to order this meeting. This is our Vision Whitefish 2045, not 4045, growth policy work session. Today is May 21st, and we're getting started just after 6 o'clock. This meeting tonight will be also online, so we'll stop occasionally during public comment to let people who are watching from afar join in, and just a little rundown on how we'll do this. We're going to have 3 possible places for the public to comment. So the first one that we'll start with is just general public comment. So if you're here to speak specifically on the economic development section, then we ask that you hold that until we've had our staff presentation and then come in with that general public comment on that specific section. In the beginning, though, this first public comment is going to be anything else on this topic, but not directly related to the section that we're going over tonight. Keep your voice up if you're an audience member, if you do a public comment, and please first state your name and address so we know who you are. And I may repeat some of your comments or questions that you have just so people at home can hear. So we have this owl that will move around and try to pick up. So we'll go ahead and get started with our general public comment, and that's for anyone who has something to add tonight or comment on that's not specific to the economic development section. So raise your hand. All right, go ahead.
Hi, my name. As representatives of Whitefish residents, we have been concerned with Montana Land Use Plan Act and its impact of the act as implemented strips communities of valuable public participation opportunities by excluding in. However, the Montana Supreme Court's decision in May acknowledged that certain bills passed during the 2023 legislature were in part unconstitutional as they LLC, which stands for Montanans Against Irresponsible Densification, be entitled to a permanent injunction prohibiting the state from implementing certain actions under MLUPA's Title 76, Chapter 25, that would result in barriers to constitutional. On behalf of the community, Citizens for Tandem or FAQ Lake Sheet, prepared by staff regarding when and how the public can participate in future zoning and subdivision decisions with programs now legally required by the recent court ruling, and how this called out and affirmed in this required in MLUPA growth policy section update. Please provide a scheduled timeline of general public participation that will now be required, as well as outreach to stakeholders and deadline for public comment, if any. Also include the adoptions but the city has made to accommodate and regarding the already adopted public participation chapter. PDF would also like to request if you considered a stakeholder on chapter input moving forward. Whitefish staff has done a good job of updating fairly regularly on the Engage Focus website and making it easy to find them. However, in order to ensure engagement and timely feedback from CBF's members, it would be helpful to have a more extended time outline of when chapters will be.
Thank you, Cameron. All right, go ahead, Mary.
Mary Flowers, also with Citizens for Better Flathead. At 135 South Main in Kalispell. I want to make you aware of the situation going on in Kalispell that I think is something that you should be aware of as you move through your growth policy update. The city of Kalispell, unbeknownst to many, has been operating on a provisional permit for their sewer and water treatment plant for 15 years. And they have not resolved the issue of nutrients getting into Ashley Creek. They have recently and very quietly asked the DEQ to lower the standards on Ashley Creek so that they can discharge additional nutrients. And we've recently gone to them and we are concerned with this. That decision still needs to go through a public process and hearing. But as they move forward in their growth policy, we are encouraging them to really look at the degradation that's going on in Ashley Creek is largely from development. And what we need to do as communities is to really look at our growth policies and make sure that our stormwater policies, that our drainage policies really are top notch so that we're not finding that our sewage treatment plants are not meeting water quality standards and to have to take the really distasteful step of asking to actually lower the standards for water quality where sewage is being discharged. For Whitefish, that's the Whitefish River. And I'm not suggesting that Whitefish is anywhere near out of compliance with their permits because it just updated the plan. But I am suggesting that it is something in this plan that you need to pay attention to how you are mitigating the water quality impacts from the growth that is obviously coming our way. Thank you.
Thank you, Mary. So, general public comment.
I want to ask a question of Cameron.
Okay, go ahead.
This is a question for Cameron. I would like to know from you at some point in the future, if there's anything specific that this board is not doing with regard to public comment that may violate the decision that you cited. As far as I know, we just revamped it to allow for general public comment at the first, as Putin explained, and then specific comments from the public to each agenda item, and then another general one at the end. So, and everything is available on the internet. So as far as I know, we're in compliance. So let us know if we're not, okay?
I appreciate it. Easier for both.
All right, thank you. Next, general public comment.
Oh, no, that's after them, but. The one online, but.
They're so comfortable in their home. Anybody here? Okay, we'll take the online.
Nathan, can you hear us?
Yep. Yeah, can you hear me?
Yes.
Okay, you may, give your comment.
Yeah, Nathan Dugan, 937 Kalispell Avenue. I couldn't hear the first comment. Apologies, it was cutting in and out, but I did hear reference to the Maid lawsuit. Supreme Court did largely uphold SB 382, did strike down a few provisions, though those were addressed in SB 121 that came through this session. So it may be helpful to look that one up if you guys aren't aware of that one yet. Shelter WF also did file its opening brief at the Supreme Court, effectively asking the Supreme Court to render the decision by the district court moot because of that SB 121 update. And then, sorry, I'm working out, so a little shorter breath. But I also wanted to, I suspect there might be some people in the room there that are bothered by a reference to paid parking in the thing that's coming up later. And I just wanted to say that the Climate Action Plan Committee sent that recommendation up to the city council a while back, and the city council is actually having a work session to discuss that independent of what's going on tonight on July 21st. And so I would just ask that if folks there are there to raise that issue, that they not kind of belabor that point tonight, and please attend that July 21st city council work session to maybe air those grievances instead. Thanks.
All right, thank you, Nathan. Any other general public comment? Okay, thanks everyone for that, and sorry for those of you who couldn't hear at home. We'll all be reminded to keep our voices up and try to kind of project towards this small gray oblique thing here in the middle. All right, so now we'll move on to our agenda item tonight, which is the Economic Development Draft Chapter. And first for that, we'll have a presentation of the overview of Visioning Economic Report and Draft Chapter from Alan.
Thank you. Long range planner, city whitefish. The good news is nobody ever tells me to speak up. Okay, so just because we expect a large turnout in person and online, I'm gonna go a little more into detail talking about where we're at, because you are already quite appraised of it, but we want to make sure everybody was up to speed. So a little bit about tonight. I'm gonna talk about the visioning results. I'm gonna talk about an economic development study that was done. I'm gonna touch on the economic development chapter. We'll talk about the public comment. There will be another 2 opportunities for public comment. And then there'll be obviously the discussion with the community development board. So what is the growth policy? Is it not showing up? Okay.
This is like on there.
Why is it not working?
Shine.
I am. See. Messing with Craig?
Yeah, what's this guy?
Wow, let's see. Try it again. Let's see. See. Sorry. Work. It's still not.
That is, you gotta somehow get it. Do this. Then you can click on screen.
So he's presenting within Teams. Whatever's on your screen.
Wait, do I have something? Yes. Hooray, okay. Or again, all right, so. What is a growth policy? So it's an official public document, it's a policy document. And it's adopted by Montana cities and towns and counties as a guide for making decisions, particularly about land use, but also about economic development and other things. Most places call it a comprehensive plan or a community plan. Growth policy is really a Montana term. It's required. It used to be, but now it's required. And I guess I want to emphasize this is a 10,000-foot view. So this isn't a scientific document or a financial document. This is a document that's like, who are we as a city? What do we want to be in 20 years? What are our goals? How do we want to get there? And the specificity comes later, but this represents the values and the goals of the city, and all the regulations are built off of that. So visioning is a process by which a community forms a mental picture of its future. It's one of the first things you do. Happens very early in the process to recognize values, and typically there's a vision in the growth policy and maybe visions for each other element. There was visioning done over multiple meetings between 2003 and 2004. This is a community plan. So what we cared about was what was the community saying? I think the first thing we found interesting is we did online polling and we asked, what is the biggest threat to whitefish? And it was a few different things. Number one was affordability. Then they talked about short-term rentals, development, growth, and traffic. So those were kind of following it up and they kind of went down. But number one was affordability. We did different group exercises. We did some mapping exercises. What I want to emphasize is on the left is a scan of these group exercises. Each of these, what you see, this writing represents 10 people. So it's not one person, it's groups of 10. And when we did the visioning, there were comments on economic development, and we didn't ask questions about economic development. We asked questions like, how do you see whitefish in 20 years? What are your biggest opposition, or what are the biggest obstacles, kind of things? And then we got these responses. So at least 7 of these group comments represented some kind of economic development. The majority of them talked about more economic diversity, more jobs for the locals, more businesses, incentivizing businesses. A few of these also talked about more goods and services that we were having to drive to Kalispell, that we wanted neighborhood serving type goods and uses. So again, I think it's important to mention that these represent 10 people. These don't represent one person. Just kind of put up a picture of some of the stuff and all the little stickies that I had to actually go through and categorize all this. But here's what we heard. This is in regard to economic development. There was a lot of stuff that came out of visioning. As I move forward this, what I'm trying to do is represent what I heard and sort of categorize this as well as I can. So obviously, in regard to economic development, what we heard the most of is that there are more diverse economy and more higher paying jobs for whitefish. We heard people talking about reducing costs and protecting the existing local businesses, closer access to goods, and we heard people talking about having to drive out of the town to get goods and services. So the purpose of this, of economic development in general, is for smaller towns to improve the quality of life by creating jobs, enhancing local businesses, and attracting new investments. It involves leveraging local strengths and resources to foster more sustainable growth and community revitalization. And there's very specific requirements in regard to what the Montana Land Use Planning Act requires. So it's very narrow. It says that we have to look at potential existing business enterprises. We have to look at what the job composition is. We have to look at what the sites are that could facilitate that kind of business in the enterprises, what local characteristics the city has, what are the facilities that are needed, and whether or not financially the city can support. So there's very specific things. Not being an economic development expert, we hired economic development experts to do this. We did that in 2023. We contracted with GSBS Consulting. We gave them a list of community stakeholders that were business owners, people that were involved in the economic development side. And there was approximately 30 of them that emails went out to. 17 of them responded and got involved. The consultants over a period of 6 months met with 30 different meetings. They gave 2 different public meetings and they went through a whole lot of data. And they presented to us this report. And this report was presented to the planning board in 2 different meetings, one in April and one in June. But I mentioned this report because this is a significant. A lot of this economic development element is based on the report, the visioning comments, previous growth policies, and previous economic development reports. So that's what we used to put this together. So some of the are interesting. The most people are employed by winter sports, although that's not a year-round business. There are different levels, but the biggest employer is Logan Health, which is 480 people. That came from Logan Health. I got that number. The second biggest year-round employer is BNSF, which 280, and then after that is Whitefish School District. The thing I found a little bit worrisome about that is in 2007, when our growth policy was done, Whitefish School District reported 240 people. So given the size of the Flathead and how much we've grown, there's really only been 10 more employees that have been added to Whitefish School District since that time. Here are the key takeaways of what this report said. It said that the areas of expected job growth are tourism, professional services, and healthcare, and what's declining is transportation, warehousing, and information systems. And what's most lacking in Whitefish are personal and business services. So that would be your catering, event planning, tattoo, personal training, personal spa, grooming, beauty salon type things. Clothing retailers for locals. So we're talking about for the local population to find affordable clothes, affordable shoes, and construction businesses. So although there's a lot of construction happening in Whitefish, there's not a lot of locally sited commercial construction businesses and construction people. These are the trends that the report said will influence the Whitefish economy. So increase in remote workers, how attainable affordable housing is, traffic and parking, and that Whitefish is shifting from a resource and a transportation to a tourism-based economy. Here's some of the other takeaways. 43% of the jobs are tourism-based. The majority of the Whitefish economy is tourism. And this is what the report said, that there's a need to diversify the economy. 76% of the people who work here don't live here. 70% of the Whitefish residents are employed in management, business, and financial sectors. Only 10% of these jobs are offered in Whitefish. 20% work remotely, so the remainder of them are commuting out of Whitefish. So people are commuting, a large amount of people are commuting into Whitefish here to work, and a large number of people are commuting out of Whitefish into other places to work, which is what we call a jobs housing imbalance. They said the economic strengths of Whitefish were a strong tourism economy, a resort tax for infrastructure, proximity to glacier, and our rail. This is something we, in particular, is specific to Whitefish, that we have the ability to be able to leverage the rail access that we have here. Economic weaknesses is the lack of economic diversity, which we heard in all the visioning, hyper-specific zoning, so zoning that's way too specific, lack of housing, and basic needs and services are more available in nearby communities. The study recommended a few things. It said we should attract more diversity in primary job generating businesses. We need to review all of the zoning to see if it's too strict in all areas of town. Determine if there could be additional neighborhood commercial or mixed use locations. So when I'm talking about neighborhood commercial, when I'm talking about big box, we're talking about a coffee shop, your little neighborhood market, or mixed use developments in general. There is a recommendation to consider limiting the number of particular businesses types in the downtown. So there are suggestions where maybe there's too many diamond stores. I'm not picking on it, but it's using examples. Too many art galleries, whatever. Look at putting a limit on that so that other kinds of businesses could happen in the downtown. There was also some discussion about looking at additional parking management, because a lot of the concerns had to do with parking and whether or not how we're managing parking. Objectives here is what we're trying to do is maintain a diversity of jobs, higher paying jobs, a diversity of goods and services. That's the key. Other ski towns like Aspen and Jackson were similar to us 30 years ago, but over time they've become primarily visitor destinations and exclusive playgrounds for the wealthy. They no longer have a local tourism industry or a local industry apart from tourism. They have limited goods and services available for locals, and the shops and stores are primarily wealthy tourist oriented. Most of the workers commute from other communities. They have little or no subsidized housing, and economic diversity is the key to maintaining this livability. So the goals and the objectives of this aim to maintain Whitefish's character over the next 20 years. In order to keep us from becoming Aspen or Vail, means we need to have a diverse economy that encourages industries other than tourism. That includes remote work, tech startups, low impact light industry, sustainable agriculture, relies less on the seasonal tourism and more on year-round residents that can help stabilize housing, supporting our locally owned businesses. It keeps our money circulating locally, supporting craft tourism, and that's sort of your unique local experience, and investing in infrastructure, roads, public transportation. There's been some recommendations to look at our broadband and whether or not we're providing the kind of broadband is needed for some of these high-tech businesses. The way that the economic development chapter element is set up is with a summary snapshot. That's what you see on the front page. So every element in this plan is going to have a little snapshot, kind of a simple cheat sheet talking about some of the statistics or the facts from that element. It'll have a background in the economy. It talks about the impacts of tourism, discussion of the other types of industries in Whitefish. It talks about the existing commercial areas, the need for economic diversification, the availability of local goods and services, our previous economic studies that were done, the current economic development, and then goals and objectives. And the goals and objectives are the way that this element is saying we are going to achieve what we're trying to do. There's a lot of goals and objectives in there. They don't have time. Nobody wants me to go through every one of them. So I'm going to just talk about the overall goal and sort of what we were trying to do. So the first goal talks about encouraging a balanced year-round base economy that continues to provide essential jobs, goods, and services. And this was to determine whether or not there are appropriate commercial areas. We don't know. We're not there yet. And to incentivize more job diversity and increase availability of goods and services. All the economic studies that we've done over the last 30 years and both growth policies have talked about incentivizing desirable businesses. The Economic Development Report, some of the visiting comments, and several of the Whitefish High School papers talked about more availability that they have to drive out of Whitefish. I want to mention that this has kind of been a misconception that's going around. It is not correct that after this chapter is complete, that the public can't do anything about commercial happening in their neighborhoods. All this is a policy document. After this, the next thing would be a land use plan where we will be working with the public to look at where the areas are designated. And then after that, there would be zoning, whether or not we have to write new zoning and whether or not we have to institute new zoning, which is also a public process. So I guess it's really important to emphasize that I've been seeing the rumor that this is the only chance, and it's not. This is only the first step in looking at what we are and what we want to be and what we want to have here. Supporting local business retention and expansion, and the objectives in there talks about retaining local businesses, capitalizing on BNSF, using local advantages that we have to develop more primary jobs, encouraging more communications with other jurisdictions so that we're not duplicating services and maybe we can leverage what's best for each community. Local said that restaurants and goods were too expensive. So there's some language in there that talks about things like more food trucks and these pop-up shops, or these kind of temporary shops that fill up vacant buildings or your farm stands or those kinds of things to sort of provide more low-cost goods to the locals. It suggests zoning amendments to look at limited neighborhood commercial. And one of the comments that I saw is about that this is going to result in commercial being developed along places like Caro or Armory. And I think I want to mention right now the current growth policy, what we have right now in our definition of urban says that neighborhood commercial may be appropriate along Collector. But this is not new. That's a policy that is already in effect right now. So maintain the downtown core of the commercial, governmental, and cultural center of the community. So we have a downtown master plan. This recommends continuing that. It also looks at zoning to put a limit on certain types of overabundant uses. And I've heard a few different comments about whether this is discretionary, whether this is discriminatory. I think it's important to mention that zoning does. Zoning looks at what uses are appropriate, what types of uses are appropriate, and zoning often puts limits on things. Zoning puts limits on how many dispensaries we can have. Zoning puts limits on how many short-term rentals we can have. This would be looking at how many types of art galleries or how many types of whatever in the downtown to be able to provide more goods and services. So zoning does this all the time. And then the last was talking about a downtown parking study, which I know there's a whole lot of interest about, to increase turnover, availability. And this is just a recommendation to look at. Now, there's a current parking management plan, there's an economic development report, there's a climate action committee like Nathan talked about that are saying we need to look at this, and there's going to be a council work session to discuss this in July 21st, whether they want to do it. It talks about protecting the natural resources, the unique character and qualities of Whitefish. This came almost directly out of the existing growth policy. And this talks about incentives for growth and retention to support localized agriculture, reviewing zoning to see if there's more produce stands, farmers markets, try to capitalize on that. And farm stops, which are sort of a consignment type of grocery store where the store owner is basically letting someone bring in their product, but they're not paying for it yet. The last one talks about supporting organic and local farming. And there's stuff about talking with DNRC, Department of Natural Resources, and whether we can balance the tourism demand here with community character. There's been a lot of discussion about rapid versus moderate growth. And I think it's important to mention that these terms are not used in this economic development element. This has not been used. But this plan element looks at diversifying the economy and providing better access to goods and services. The goals and objectives that you see are not rapid growth goals or moderate growth goals. These are goals and objectives to diversify the economy. Commercial leases are gonna come and go. Commercially zoned properties are gonna develop. Either way, the intent is to try to get the right whitefish beneficial types of businesses and goods to come here. Growth and development is addressed during, so growth and development, that is addressed during the land use, when you're looking at the types of land uses and where they're gonna go and how much of it and what the zoning is gonna be. That's when you're dealing with growth. What kind of policies, I guess, could have stopped the influx in 2020 and 2021? So it's not really something that we can control. Now, if you want to talk about moderate or rapid growth, we have a demographic chapter which went to the board, I can't remember now. And that talks about what our projected estimate for population is. It says between 3,000 and 5,000 people over the next 20 years. So that would be our range. The only thing that we have right now that's based on that. So again, this is to encourage sustainable growth that maintains whitefish's character. So we first started getting comments about this when there was just the goals and objectives. We did the goals and objectives first because that was part of what we asked the consultant to do. So once the consultant finished their report, they gave us a long list of what they proposed to be the goals and objectives. And we prepared these and we brought these to the planning board. We first started, and those were discussed in June. Sometime after that, we started getting comments from one of the community development board and several of the community development board members started talking about these. And on October 21st, right before our city council meeting, I received 16 very similar emails with these concerns, even though it wasn't on the agenda. But these concerns talked about whether Whitefish wanted to be a moderate or fast growth community, whether the city needed to provide a full range of goods and services, whether or not locals should just drive elsewhere to get what they needed, and that no one had expressed wanting any commercial uses near a residential area. So that was kind of the content of what these emails were. Now, since that time, very recently, I've received several letters in support. I think I really received 6 letters in opposition, which I'll talk about in a minute. But those letters in opposition that I received today, basically, talks about they oppose revising any kind of zoning to allow any more commercial diversity or neighborhood serving commercial, and opposition to the parking program, which again, I guess we're going to be talking about that more in July. Staff received a recent version of this draft. So there was a draft that went out to so staff spent months working on this draft and it went through all the different city departments. They looked at it. Then it went out to all of our agencies and our stakeholders and we gathered their input on it. And then we sent out to 600 people that are subscribed on the Engage Whitefish site. And what you see, what came in tonight is the result of that. Now, since that time, we received a recent rewrite of this, and this was submitted from the Heart of Whitefish. It also includes some proposed language from Explorer Whitefish on tourism. We received, and there's a reason why I'm talking about this in particular. We received letters from FFRG, Flathead Families for Responsible Growth, 6 citizens and members of the Community Development Board requesting that that red marked draft be accepted as the new version of the economic development element. We also have received a couple of letters of support in the chapter as it's written. What I want to do, this will be probably the last part of this, is there's a draft that's gone out, but I want to talk about what the difference is between what we received and what the draft is now, just so everybody understands what it is. The draft right now says that tourism is half of the economy and that the economy is mostly unbalanced and predominantly tourist. The red mark says that the white suggests the economy is more balanced and tourism is half of the economy. It has 4 paragraphs, close to about a page regarding the benefits of tourism. It has language that the most pressing issues related to tourism are short-term rental, second home ownership, and availability of workers. It deletes the language that mentions negative impacts of tourism include traffic, prices for locals, difficulty protecting natural resources, and community character. It adds that the public sentiment towards tourism recently has become more positive. I guess there's been a recent study a survey that was done for the Sustainable Tourism Management Plan. I haven't seen it, but from what I'm hearing, the outlook on tourism has improved since the decline in 2020. It mentions about what Housing Whitefish has done, and it lists the director by name, which I really wouldn't recommend putting in a growth policy. And then it discusses air DNA and the statistics, which I think is a website to look at what the short-term rentals are around the country. In regard to goods and services, it's revised to read that locals choose to drive out of town for goods and services, not that they must drive out of town for goods and services. It removes the language of any type that there's a deficit of goods and services for locals. It removes language that locally serving businesses have moved out of the downtown. And there's language added with the specific types of businesses that are here in town now. It removes all the findings in the report that suggest that zoning is too restrictive regarding business services and that restaurants are unaffordable to the locals. It changes the narrative to say that there were a few versus many visioning comments regarding economic development. It deletes the recommendations to support food trucks, pop-up shops, or any other temporary businesses to provide lower costs to locals. And it removes the recommendation to consider limitations on the number of certain visitor type businesses downtown, like I talked about, diamond stores, whatever. So economic development is critical to maintaining Whitefish's character as a livable, inclusive, quaint ski town that welcomes people from all walks of life and income. We tried hard to listen to the lessons learned from other ski towns that lost their character and livability and became exclusive for the ultra wealthy and the tourists. The chapter was written through the lens of previously adopted plans, such as the existing growth policy, the climate action plan, sustainable tourism master plan, the downtown business district master plan, the Baker Avenue economic development study, several other economic development studies, and the 1996 growth policy. This chapter is still in progress. More will be added when other elements are completed, including land use, transportation, and public facilities. With that, I'm done with the presentation.
All right, thank you, Alan. So that took care of your presentation and then also review of comments received, right,
Up until today.
up until
Up
today.
until today.
All right. So thanks everyone for listening to that. Hopefully a lot of it is stuff that you guys have heard before and were prepared to hear, but you did a great job
Thank you.
reiterating where we've been, where we are now. So now we'll move on to public comment on this draft chapter. So this is the,
Question.
well, it's not on our agenda, but we're gonna discuss, but if you have questions for Alan,
Screen.
yeah, go ahead.
I just saw it up on the screen. It said questions from the board.
Oh, I didn't see that.
I did have questions on the end of my slide.
Do you want
I
to take
talked fast,
questions?
so sure.
Does anybody have questions?
I was
For
just curious as to what your take was on the revisions provided by the Heart of Whitefish. Which you went over that briefly during the course of your discussion there, that they've added 2 or 3 pages worth of those comments and position about what we should do and what we shouldn't do, and is that you would consider incorporating into the plan, or portions of their revised plan that you would say, no, this is unnecessary and like that? In other words, have you gone through and sort of edited their revised version into a combination of what we have and what they would like to see from the third portion that's.
I'm a little reluctant. I don't think I'm prepared to do that. I'm trying to stay as objective and neutral as I can and just say what the existing one says, what the proposed one is, because ultimately you're gonna be the ones to make the decision. I'm not prepared to answer that. There's things I agree with, there's things I don't agree with, but I'm not gonna give my opinion.
Well, it's up to us to perhaps edit their version and suggest.
Didn't you incorporate some of the stuff?
I did. So there's been 2 different, I've received many rewrites. There was an initial rewrite that I received from Heart of Whitefish, and I incorporated as much as I could into that. There was a lot of, like rearranging of paragraphs and doing some wordsmithing, which doesn't really matter to us, really. I think it really kind of comes down to the goals and objectives that are being asked. Obviously, we support the goals and objectives as they're there because they're based on economic study, other growth policies, vision comments. We didn't just come up with those. This is data oriented stuff. I do have some concerns about the slant that's given on it about that. Again, this is really something up to the board about. I guess the question is Whitefish have a balanced economy with all the goods and services? Do locals have to drive outside to get other things? Do we want to facilitate that or do we not? That is not my policy question or answer. I can't make that decision.
Thank you.
Any other questions for Alan? So we'll move on to public comment on this draft chapter now. we will see how much participation. I'm knowing that that's why you're all here, but I'm not sure if everyone wants to comment. So we'll start with trying to keep it, just brief and specific to what you would like to say. If you're representing a group and you'd like to speak, usually we have a 15-minute limit. That's kind of the maximum. So we'll see how things go. If we need to impose time limits, we can, but try to be brief and always be courteous. On the back of the agenda that you got, we have the principles for civil dialogue. So some people, may feel very passionately about specific things, and passion is great. Just be civil in your passion. So if you'd like to speak, raise your hand and I'll just recognize and state your name and your address. And if you're representing a group, I think Rhonda is, let us know that. All right, go ahead.
So my name is Rhonda Fitzgerald. I am with the Heart of Whitefish and have been since it's 2003. I also served on the Jobs for Whitefish Task Force, which is referenced in the plan. It was in the early 2000s, and we looked at the business park where the Wave and the Emergency Services Building is now. It was a gravel pit that the city acquired from the county. And we looked at all the potential for economic development for the community at that time and everything that was lacking. And a number of the suggestions in this plan were included there, and I'm glad to see them come back to life. Incubators, for instance, and more tech, and places for very light manufacturing and some other things. Some things have been replaced. We thought a culinary school would be great and probably keep that on. But those were good. We did a lot of hard work for a couple of years, and those were good suggestions. Then the Heart of Whitefish partners with the city to develop the downtown master plan because our downtown was dying. And the city adopted it and gradually implemented it. And it has created an incredibly vibrant downtown because of the stringent zoning that Alan references. It made it possible for our business, our downtown to be alive, whereas most downtowns all over the country are dead, with a lot of strip sprawl and big box stores instead of vibrant downtowns. And that vibrant downtown has now attracted a lot of new residents who are affluent and appreciate the outdoor lifestyle and the amenities that we have managed to create in a population of only 10,000 people, less than 10,000 people. And that also is very attractive to visitors, and there's a symbiosis there between the visitors and the residents, because some visitation creates funds that can be reinvested in the community, in its recreation assets and other things. So the tone of this particular chapter, which is very anti-tourism, is a problem from my perspective. And I also found that the consultants report, and we had worked with them before on the 93 South corridor plan, they just pull their data off the internet, and it's incredibly inaccurate, and much of it is quite outdated. They have sort of a template which looks at what I would call an outdated 20th century concept of an economy, and then they plug in the data that they can find. Industrial and manufacturing, they consider major parts of an economy for a town like Whitefish. And we recognized in the early 2000s that, pardon the pun, the train had left the station. And industrial is probably unlikely to develop here. And as we know, manufacturing is problematic all over the country. So I'm really worried that there was so much emphasis in this consultant's report on things that aren't really even valid. The cover page is just full of inaccuracies. We didn't even try to help fix that because it was just impossible to tackle. The reality is that in Whitefish, we have and there isn't any industry anymore, and not much manufacturing. Which I think is a possibility and could possibly be why manufacturing keeps appearing in this plan, is to promote more breweries in the neighborhoods. As I mentioned, the cover has a lot of should be reworked. This chapter, the economic development chapter, is written, creates a sense of antagonism between the tourism economy and the year-round economy, when actually there's a strong relationship and overlap between those two. The Convention and Visitor Bureau submitted an explanation of this, which I will reference, and we included it in our red line version, because we think it's really important to see how those two interact. Most of the businesses, tourism businesses in the report, 43%, rely on local residents for most of the year. These are not strictly tourism businesses. The only thing that's strictly tourism is hotels. But restaurants and entertainment and the arts, those are joy. So to call those 43% of jobs tourism jobs is really inaccurate. They're serving the entire community. Without locals, those businesses wouldn't survive. And without the businesses, locals would not enjoy the variety and quality that they provide, because they're sort of underwritten by the couple of months of heavy visitation that we have in the summer. A population of less than 10,000 people could not possibly enjoy the vast selection of goods and services that are available in Whitefish. The only reason we have them and enjoy them as residents is because we do have a seasonal tourism economy, not instead of, as well. This economic development chapter also references a lack of goods and services. And in fact, it's just the opposite. I can't figure this out. I went through every visioning comment, every public comment, 19 pages of them, and no one mentioned the lack of goods and services or affordable clothing. It just isn't in there. The only comment is two different people wanted a Trader Joe's. Trader Joe's has very clear demographics. They need a large population. It needs to be quite affluent in an urban area and a younger demographic. So we're not getting a Trader Joe's, okay? I thought what's going to happen in Whitefish. The consultant pulled most of their data from online sources, and it's inaccurate. For example, the report states that Whitefish has only 4 clothing stores. Well, I walked around downtown and I counted 15 clothing retailers plus 3 secondhand clothing retailers and another 4 that have recently gone out of business, unfortunately. The comments from the visioning sessions do not include the lack of goods and services, as I just mentioned. And I think that this must be coming from the consultant, but we don't have examples of the comments that provided. I was included as a stakeholder and I met with them twice. And when they had their public meeting, there was so much mistakes. We pointed them all out and they continued to persist through the final report. So I really question the quality of the work. The idea of expanding retail uses into the B2 contradicts the intent of that zone. The zone, by definition, was meant to be a secondary business district to provide for those retail sales and services characterized by the need for large display or parking areas or large storage areas. The district is meant to be auto-oriented and dependent on proximity to highways. That's what it was meant for. So businesses that wanted to grow and needed large areas but not to create another strip sprawl retail environment, because that actually forces people into cars and they have to drive out there. And it's a shame that our downtown pharmacy was basically put out of business by Walgreens when they came in, because now you have to drive to get to Walgreens too, instead of walk to the drugstore. But the downtown master plan identified that when you can keep your commercial core very compact and people can walk all around to do all their various things, that creates fewer car miles and less traffic and less driving. And that's the goal of the downtown master plan, and it has been very effective so far. We do need another parking structure at Second and Spokane, which is in the plan, because as we grow out our square footage of businesses in downtown, we will need more parking. But I think that I could go through point by point I think, a lot of the comments that were made tonight, which are new, no one has ever seen them before, were not complete. And I regret that I wasn't able to take them point by point. But I hope that you will consider the suggestions that we've made, because we think it's in the best interests of the community and the economic health of the community, that we not lay down a predicate in this chapter for decisions to be made in the land use and housing chapters that would not be good for, Whitefish. Thank you.
All right. Thank you, Rhonda. Public comment, Chris.
Hi, my name is Chris Schustrom. I'm also a founding board member of the Hard Whitefish and Whitefish. You received our suggested edits, and also, suggested removal of 3 specific, objectives under specific goals. And I'd like to specifically speak to, parking first and then remove housing, because I have pretty extensive experience with parking. So we request the removal of goal 3 to be left to study the feasibility of demand-based paid parking. This is an objective that by adopting it, you intend to pursue it. And it's important for everyone to remember that the economic development chapter will inform how the land use and the zoning chapters are created by staff and dealt with. It's important that we get it right with this one. Paid parking would create a competitive disadvantage for our downtown and will dissuade shoppers from shopping in downtown Whitefish. Paid parking will not generate the funding needed for public transit or new public parking facilities. It will drive customers away from Whitefish, resulting in less shoppers and less revenue. I served as the Snow Bus Committee Chair on the Big Mountain Commercial Association Board from 1998 through 2018 for 20 years. And I coordinated the Snow Bus with other members of the board, created the schedule, became very familiar with how federal transit and public transit is funded, as well as the Snow Bus being funded primarily privately. And their funding sources and costs. And the GSBS consultants, they misunderstand parking in Whitefish. They mistakenly state twice in the study that we should pursue paid parking because there are not time limits on parking and there isn't parking turnover. Enforcement of parking time limits and recent parking ordinances and the employee parking permit program implemented as a result of the 2019 parking management plan are creating higher turnover, providing parking opportunities that are affordable for employees and creating more availability of customer parking. These policies are also generating revenue to help maintain the parking structure through the parking leases, the employee parking leases and non-employee parking leases. I chaired that committee, the employee parking permit program committee, so I'm very familiar with that as well. Paid parking would also push customers to take more vehicle trips to other communities and the commercial strip in Whitefish, where there's no paid parking. It's not a level playing field. Every community in the area doesn't have paid parking. And so Whitefish would be at a disadvantage that way. Also goes against the goal of the Climate Action Plan and the Climate Action Committee's work to reduce vehicle trips, which I believe is part of their impetus for trying to get the city to pursue paid parking. And that's just not the case. It would get people in their cars and make them drive more to go shopping. Downtown businesses have been paying for downtown parking for over 30 years and continue to do so through 2 separate special improvement districts. Why do something like this to damage the economic vitality of downtown Whitefish? So I'd also like to quickly address housing. Housing is the #1 challenge as it relates to this chapter. Housing is the #1 challenge to economic development in Whitefish. It should be a goal in this chapter, as well as the housing and land use chapters, but it's then responded to the comment that this should be a goal, that it'll be in a different chapter. But that's not the case. And to say otherwise contradicts this chapter throughout the chapter, where it time and time again refers to the lack of affordable housing for staff or people who want to live and start a business here, as well as many comments from the visioning sessions. Right in the middle of that word cloud was the word affordability. And that specifically refers to the affordability of living here. Our economy is fragile. It is as fragile as it was 20 years ago when we started the downtown master plan project. And we also had empty storefronts downtown, which we do once again. Since there will truly be no recourse on these issues later after the growth policy is adopted, sure, you'll be able to comment publicly while these chapters are being created. But once the chapters are adopted and the city council adopts the growth policy, you won't have the opportunities such as a conditional use permit, if something's proposed in your neighborhood, to have a voice and to push back on these things. It's essential for this to be done right now, and thanks very much for your time.
You. All right. Next comment? Yes. State your name and address. You come closer to this guy, because everybody here is going to be able to hear you. Yeah, maybe even switch seats with somebody in the front. Thank you.
I believe that paid parking is just annoying, whether you can pay for it or not. It's friction to your day. And I think it's completely unnecessary, source to generate revenue. I think there can be more. I urge you guys to consider ourselves an ecosystem. You don't fix just one part of the body. When something is broken, you fix the whole body. And the whole body fixes the thing you need to have. We don't want parking to be a problem in our community. So we should encourage people to use multimodal transport in and through the community. We can connect those with other communities like Sioux Falls and Kalispell and create a bustling tourism industry based on being able to commute multimodal and trees and trains. It's glorious. We all know that. Why not capitalize on that? Housing downtown is so unbelievably imperative. Our stories from the current maximum to 5 stories within using infill, build taller homes, businesses below. I don't know what those businesses are, but can afford to live here and the service is great. And then we have so many parts of our community that attract so much quality tourism dollars. And those people will come here, spend money at their restaurants, waiters well, and those waiters get to go out for drinks that night and walk to their apartment, go upstairs, let their dog out, go home, go to sleep, wake up the next day, and be able to walk around to get their grocery or cigarettes or whatever, and then go to work. You know, maybe walk around the river. Tourism. And since we are a tourism community, I'd like to keep that in mind. We're an ecosystem. Consider condensing our community and leaving the wild as open and free and farmland and pasture as possible, and make our city dense, bustling, a little taller, a little more high quality in terms of the services. Those will come when there's more tourism and more demand. Those businesses will open naturally. Those businesses will be attracted to our community and will open, and they will see a niche and they will enter into this ecosystem. and become part of it. So. Consider shuttling people. We have a lot of hardscape along the 93. A lot of hardscape. Consider a nominal fee of $1. All these people coming in from all over to be able to park in a lot and shuttle in instead of being able to multimodal if they're coming in from Sioux Falls or Kalispell. Shuttle them in, work with a vendor. $1 from every person, I think you could pay your vendor. Break even, it would make sense to me. We're an ecosystem, guys, and we're all here to work together. And I think our community could be really beautiful if we just remember that. And so your economic plan, thank you for giving such a concise and eloquent message about what these directors came in to teach us. And I think ultimately we have a lot to say in the decision about how it's going to affect our lives since we live here.
Thanks, Jamie. All right, next comment from the public. Go ahead.
Hi, my name is David Gordon, and want my address still?
Yes, please.
896 Luran Drive. My family owns the bookstore and several other amusement properties in town. I live here my whole. I'm late to all of this. I missed the initial public comment period, but I just wanted to come voice my support for the original development plan. I just think it's really smart to diversify. I did not sense any hostility toward tourism. I just didn't get that. And that's just, like, the tourism is just the reality of living in Whitefish, and I don't see how encouraging other industries and possibilities is a threat to that. It doesn't seem like a zero-sum thing to me, because the tourism is gonna stay in place. And I just feel that we really need to create other opportunities for people to live here, because I see my friends and kind of struggling to stay in Whitefish, and people who like living grown up here and have no possibility of affording a home because they're stuck with seasonal work. And I just think that it just creates a lot of possibilities. It read to me like a document about studying different possibilities for the future of Whitefish rather than setting anything in stone. And it just, I don't know. I loved it. I actually loved the vision of Whitefish it created for me. Talking to people, I've heard a lot of hostility about, or not hostility, just maybe confusion about adding retail spaces in residential areas. That I don't really understand. I don't know if something else is doing that way just operating for me. But I don't know. I think it's a really cool vision for the future of Whitefish, where there are like little whatever corner stores where people can just kind of cruise over rather than having to drive to something. I support it. I just wanted to say that. Thank you.
Thanks, David. All right, next comment. Raise your hand or just stand. Any other public comment? Okay, go ahead.
Carter Under 2375 Mount Shires Drive. I'm kind of more in support of the original plan. Doesn't mean there can't be some great additions added to it. I'm sure there are some good points. I think everybody from every perspective is coming at it from a very pure wanting the best for Whitefish. I think unfortunately a lot of times there's unintended consequences. And I believe we're living in a time that's like, last time I closed out the Northern and maybe the Remy the next night, for at least a week, I was like, I'm done. I feel like crap, not happening again. I don't want any more of that. I think the 2 or 3 years of tourism where the shoulder seasons really went away. And my father-in-law, who's lived here for many more years, even today on the phone was like, yeah, but the shoulder seasons are gone still. I was like, no, they're back. We have shoulder seasons. tourism is always gonna be the bread and butter. Many of you, long before me, created an amazing city that will always attract tourists, but it is becoming more back to just the summer and winter. And waiters and the waitresses and watching the stores close and the delis close that can't survive those down seasons and relying on just hiring high schoolers for the summertime to get by is not a good business. Those high schoolers graduate, they want to stay here, they want to work here, they want to live here, they can't. You know, I think it's important that we don't consider it as adversarial, just like. It's adding to, it's helping support in those down season. The mountain's gonna be fine in the summer, but point of that, last summer, my kids, for the first time in 10 years, had the ropes course entirely to themselves for 2 hours. I couldn't believe it. I talked to the young Holy high schoolers that were working the ropes course, and they said, we've never seen it like this. I think everybody still has that pressure of feeling like what me, I don't know the exact years, I'm not smart. Maybe it's 22, 23, 21, when we were packed, everything was bad, but that is coming down and we have to look towards the future. And the truth is, I talk more than I actually know to people. Not smart, don't know consultants, but I talk to people a lot. And neighborhoods south of Whitefish, they tell me whether it sounds good or not, or it's adversarial or not, that they won't go to downtown in the summer and in the winter. It's just too many logging trucks, it's too many tourists, and they don't go there. I was at trivia night last night at Tap House. And funny enough, I've seen more board members of different boards and more council members at that bar than any other bar, hands down. I always see them and it's great, but that to me is a local bar. And you talk to the creative mastermind who has kept that going through the ups and downs, through environmental problems, through disease problems, through political problems that cause things. And he struggles to keep it going in some of these times. And he does creative things that employ people, but I talk to the bartenders, they struggle. 6 months later, it's a new bartender. And I talk to them and they're saying, yeah, it's great. But during the off season, I can't get tips. So I really think the diversification is key. And again, it's not going to cut into tourism. This place is too amazing. That ship has sailed. Tourism is the bread and butter. But we need more industry, not necessarily industrial. We need more industry to help support the off season. If there was a law office across the street from Tap House, they're not coming and going with the whims of politics or the whims of disease or the whims of whatever else defines tourism ups and downs. They're there going to lunch. They're there having a drink after with their coworkers. If we had Quicken Loans, and maybe that's not the right example, because we're not talking about big box. We're talking about small professional businesses, talking about trade schools, talking about other types of local retailers. And there is a lot of clothes down here. I can't afford most of those clothes. I go to St. Paul's, Kalispell to buy stuff. I shop down here for other things too. And I think it's awesome that tourism has given us some of the most amazing restaurants. Hers being one of them. It's awesome. And so that mix does bring so much value. But also there's other small mom and pops that are dying off. One was just announced a couple days ago on Facebook. And that's sad. They rely on training up high schoolers every up season. And we need year-round businesses that will support year-round small mom and pops. Nobody wants Kmart. Nobody's talking about that. Neighbors I talk to in Park Knoll, on Carroll Avenue, Great Northern Heights say, wow, it would be really cool if I could walk to a small commercial area that had a few offerings where I could get a few goods. I would love that. Don't think it's adversarial as David. And so I do see a plan, doesn't count for other things being added to it or adjusted. And I think everybody has the right intentions, but things change and it's hard. And last point is everybody talks, I don't think I even read one thing, I was put 3, but I get nervous. Everybody talks about the way Whitefish used to be and the change. We don't want to become Aspen. We don't want to become Tahoe, but that is the path we're on. The no change is the path that leads to that. And so while we may not succeed, and I don't think a lot of tourist destination locations have found the perfect answer, and I'm guessing we won't either. But we have to try something, or we know the outcome. It's already baked in, it's already happening, and we need diversification, we need more jobs, we need them year round, and they will support those tourist spots. I've been in the summer where they can't let any more people in the door, so they're not getting any more revenue based on max capacity and the staff they have. I've watched in October, someone go to right down the street, Coffee Traders, and it's got a closed sign because it just doesn't make sense. So I try to advise them of another place like Wild that's open or something else. We need year-round people here, and that means year-round businesses. Those businesses will support the off seasons that very much do exist. We're a blip because of COVID. So I don't know if any of that makes sense, but I applaud everybody here. Everybody's got the best. But we do need to try to make a change.
Thank you, Carter. All right, and Mary, I saw you just after.
Yeah, and I'm finding somebody else. I can't see this, dude, I can see this.
Hi, my name is Jennifer Oliver. I live at 1079 North Meridian Road in Kalispell. I have lived most of my life in Whitefish, but different events led me away. I care about Whitefish immensely. I used to be on the Long Range Planning Task Force and represented the city of Whitefish, and then that fell apart. Bet many of you remember that. But I was on the land use planning and transportation and affordable housing. I'd like to say that when considering housing, consider how our aging population and how are in different, we're working on different modes of mobility. Not everyone is in a wheelchair, it seems like anymore, or, you know, there's different things people are using. It's pretty neat. I also encourage you to think of noise, lights shining in windows, and wind. Where I'm living right now is extremely noisy. I'm ground level and cars come and go all night. There's a lot of construction still in the area. And it's not a good quality of life where I'm at. I'm trying to relocate. See what happens there. And then snow removal. But in some of these housing plans, and maybe we can have like different communities that are designed for young people and the elderly or not. I don't know if, you know, the mixed use thing, if it is good to have all that, maybe it is. But some of the plans I've seen, it seems like it's designed to have people walk that aren't going to be able to. So, I don't know, just consider all that. And when it comes to services, I was thinking healthcare and things like that, you know. There's a lot of clinics being needed and such. So, but thank you for listening. Thank you to all, everyone who's said.
Thank you, Jennifer. All right. Anyone else for public comment? Mary, did you still have?
I do.
Okay.
And that's over and that's the around.
Maybe if you don't want to come forward, you can give it to Chris. Perhaps he can help you.
Okay.
Oh, did you already? Sorry, I missed that. Thank you.
Okay. That's okay. And that's as much for your record as for, because I do this kind of, you know.
Thank you.
And thank you for your efforts and, in particular for the additional, opportunity for public comment. I think that's, really going to be important as this moves forward. Like the Heart of Whitefish, we have been actively engaged in numerous City of Whitefish policy discussions over the past several decades, where we have stood with many Whitefish residents as we represent and again suggest opposed to policy suggestions as found in this draft economic chapter which once again suggests the need to diversify the local economy. This overemphasis on the need to diversify the local economy represented in the past and again, actually opening the door to highway-oriented strip development, so-called neighborhood commercial uses that would in reality rely on highway-oriented strip development. Both policies, we feel, will degrade the years of hard work it has taken by the public and groups like Heart of Whitefish to build the unique and synergetic of the Whitefish downtown area, where concentration of businesses feed on each other. Residents have been quite clear that they wish to retain the small town character of Whitefish, and we feel the detailed comments submitted by the Heart of Whitefish speak to this effectively, and we urge you to adopt those changes. Going off my comments just briefly and kind of in response to some of the discussion here tonight, I hear the need, when I hear comments about diversifying the economy, I don't hear the kind of economic development that results in strip development along Highway 93, along Highway 93 coming in west of town. When we worked on that neighborhood plan and that corridor plan there, we have fought the idea that strip commercial is neighborhood commercial. We fought the idea that diversity means we have to have all sorts of different jobs, different businesses here. We need businesses that, as has been said here, can bridge some of that off-season time when people need to be able to work full-time. We need businesses, and what I hear the Heart of Whitefish saying in their comments is, yes, let's create more jobs. Let's create housing. Housing has to be part of this economic plan. I don't see a lot of difference until you get to, as we have for the last 2 decades, sat on committees where diversity of businesses turns into a land strip commercial development. And that's what we're opposed to. I think that's what's generally opposed to. So we need to clarify those terms and look at even having a definition section for this, because diversity mean lots of different things, and I think it's being misused here. So in addition to our initial points, the cover page for this chapter has a statement: goods and services limited by zoning or availability and result in residents driving to other nearby communities for need. A lot of residents that we talk to don't want to bring in the kind of large commercial development that you can easily access in a very short drive to Kalispell. We want to see development that enhances and sustains the community of Whitefish. So I think this goods and services statement is not appropriate given the changes being recommended in the Whitefish. Statement that is in the box as a full quote, I don't understand what it means. I think it's confusing. It's one of the few places that does talk about housing, but I would suggest that this be relooked at and rewritten. I'm not sure where it comes from. And so I think it's inappropriate as a major feature on the front page of this chapter. On page 3 at the bottom, there's a footnote that says that sources, recent statistics come from the 2023 Whitefish Economic Growth Policy Update prepared by GSBS Consulting. We've heard tonight that this report includes a lot of inaccuracies. I think that footnote needs to be looked at as if we want to say that this chapter really rests on that report, Um, and, look at some of the other sources of, economic information that might be more accurate, that maybe are reflected somewhat in here, but to say all of this chapter is based on that report with the inaccuracies, I think that's problematic. Page 9 states, the community, as well as the unique commercial character of Whitefish. To protect those values, zoning has been franchise and formula style chain businesses downtown and limits them in other commercial zones. While not currently regulated, formula services and formula hotels should be limited in downtown in order to further safeguard the unique business climate. Under the Montana Land Use Planning Act, which is driving these changes that we're making, can the zone does the city have to regulate these type of franchise and formula businesses? This statement is kind of out of context in the sense of what this chapter wants to encourage. And so I think we need to clarify, is this just aspirational and we're not going to be able to include this kind of zoning? I think it is important and it has helped retain part of the character of Whitefish by having some of these regulations in place currently. Page 9 also discusses the use of conditional use permits for buildings over 10,000 square feet. I'm not clear, again, if when we get to implementation of this plan for zoning, if it's going to allow us to use conditional use permits to regulate and to make sure that the character of these large scale businesses coming into the community are conditioned so that they fit. So again, I think we need to tie this somewhat. I really broad vision, but I think it needs to be connected to implementation and have some reality in terms of, is the community going to that's page 9, the last sentence. Visioning session, this plan update. For this plan update, virtually all jobs for residents of Whitefish. Again, we heard from Rhonda that she read through all the comments, she didn't see that. And again, I think using these terms, economic development and greater diversity, are way too aspirational and undefined and will lead to misunderstandings of what the community really wants to retain the character of this community, to encourage business development and growth, but in character with the community. Page 10 talks about the WP2 secondary business zone, which is the entrance south to the city on Highway 93 out there. And it talks about it as being very prescriptive zoning regarding what is allowed in terms of retail and services. I can't tell you how many committees I've sat on in Whitefish and participated in hearings over that exact wording of that zoning. And I want to say that that has gone through such lengthy and historical debate in this community that this isn't the time to change that. We don't need diversity in that zone. We need to retain the zoning that is there and the very prescriptive nature of it to keep the vitality of our downtown healthy. Downtown Whitefish is the envy of so many communities because they have city council, the residents, part of Whitefish, all of these folks have come together to build a community where we have the highest foot traffic of any town I think in the state, if I'm correct. Last night, city council in Kalispell was packed with businesses and they were talking about a grant that the city is going for to reduce the lanes in the downtown area. And there were numerous comments about how dead their downtown is, how nobody is seen walking there. It's just not a vibrant downtown. And this, there were mixed opinions, but I think it's very true of Kalispell that compared to Whitefish, Kalispell is dead and there isn't the vitality. And so it's a rare combination that we've been able to secure here. And I just wanted to end by saying that keeping that WB2 zoning in place is going to be really important to retaining the vitality of our downtown. And finally, I want to just say and respectfully, Alan, I know that you go through your reports very quickly and you've thought about it and put everything in something to help explain and to help leave a record. I personally felt that the comments, that there was a really negative tone about evaluating the comments that were received and the kind of, and I feel like it discourages public. I can't point to one specific thing and say, I wished you wouldn't have said this, but it's just the overall tone I felt was really critical of the public comment that was received that was counter to what the draft report is. And if there's some way, I really respected what you said to Toby, that you weren't gonna take a specific stand, and I think that's appropriate. But I also ask that there be some way to more neutrally describe public comment that has been received. Thank you.
All right, anybody else from this audience? Thank you.
My name's Sam. I live in 420 Basket Grade, Creston. The owner to bring to bar right here. I think any reason to keep people from leaving Whitefish is gonna help Whitefish.
Yeah.
Our Columbia Falls, instead of having to drive right through Whitefish to go to Kalispell, if they can stop in Whitefish, they're gonna eat in Whitefish, they're gonna drink in Whitefish, they're gonna play in Whitefish. So I don't have to go to Kalispell to buy my 6-year-old a new pair of shoes. I'm gonna eat at McKinsey River downtown, not next to Costco. The more people we can keep here, the better it is for everybody.
Sam. Okay, go ahead,
Could
Ron.
I just make a quick clarification?
Yes.
My comment about was that people did not say they needed more goods and services, cheaper clothes, cheaper backpacks. That wasn't in the vision anywhere. There were several comments about good jobs for the residents. More jobs for residents. That was in there. That wasn't I'm sorry if I misspoke.
All right. Yes, Marty, go ahead.
Marty Brandt, I'm here. Families in Whitefish. Speaking and I'm gonna say. I live at 575 Murray Road. I grew up in Whitefish and I lived in a few other towns, returned back here because my husband grew up in Minneapolis. He visited Whitefish by train for ski camps when he was someday I want to live there. And so we moved back in 2014. To be clear, now weekly, my family discusses if and where we will move. I know where working class people exist in stratified towns like Sun Valley and Berkeley. Those places. It's a great spot for spa treatments, $200 t-shirts and luxury furniture. It's a playground for someone, but it is not a home for me. It's the cheaper clothes and the backpacks. What my family needs. And it's not just my family. growth and alienation has driven a lot of my friends who are smart and hardworking to go move to other places. I read the economic element written by staff. I felt hope for the first time in a really long while. It was 7:30 in the morning and I shouted to my husband, hey, they might attract new industries here, ones with real wages. They might neighborhoods. Remember that donut shop in Bellingham? It might help practical businesses survive. It feels sustainable and resilient, and it includes us. And I'm going to be honest, I read the extensive line by line revisions made to this policy, and I do agree. I think everybody wants what's best here. To me, these edits and repeated references to older policies would trap us on our really reliant on tourism, and I get it. Tourism is great. Nobody wants to get rid of that. I manage a business and we are alive because of tourism. Wouldn't be here. But we need it'd be great to have customers year round, right? And not just depend on these seasons when we are overwhelmed, even when it is a little bit more. It's here, it's happening right now. If you don't believe me, walk downtown and ask yourself, do I really want to shop here? Do I belong here? I personally aspire to something better. I want to revisit the Engage Whitefish Fishing sessions because I attended mine and they formed the economic element and they were really unique. And I attended my meeting, I'm on Armory Road. There were like 60 of us, maybe more. We all were like huddled over our maps. We had discussing what was important to us in our future, and the process felt collaborative and it felt really inspiring. However, many of my fellow attendees are also from working families and can't be here tonight. So we're never told that like, oh, hey, but it's only going to count if you check your email and stay really vigilant and prepared to defend your ideas. People who attended those meetings and what they said, I consider how often government gets to hear from that many engaged people. It's not. My vision group's feedback matters, even if we could only attend our one session, our voices still count. I was going to end my comment there, but I did feel like I had to offer a little bit more, only because I tried to discuss this policy with Brent. I read it, but they're convinced it promotes rapid growth, big box stores, and parking. And the email comments that I read through in the draft reveal a similar pattern on this, but to be clear, I do in the original economic element, those ideas are either non-existent, discouraged, or proposed only for study. So it's not about those things, it's about our vision for our future. And I really think everybody do a little bit of like soul searching of where we are actually at and where we are at for working class people. We can make our town a place that's not a Sun Valley, a place that includes everyone.
Thank you, Marty. All right, should we turn to online comments if there are any? Anyone else?
I don't know if we can provide a community plans and that. And like I said, the caregiving and they elderly people, it's not about your family. But like there's people that really cannot, that they're really aren't getting. So, and I don't know, we can incorporate that into these communities. A place for that to be done. I saw recently that they offered nail cutting, I think in Whitefish once every 2 months or something like that.
Thank you.
I think Kevin might be understanding what Kevin Gardner was. There's two. I have a whole lot of specific things. I'm not going to pick apart the plans there nor any of the other plans that are floating around out there. I haven't seen the some of the today. And I don't speak on behalf of all of our chamber members until my board analyzes what's there and then it's. Number one, I think the process that the city has been running. Process, and it's been a legit. Perhaps that people fall into, having now been here for a good long while. That's good and long with some other folks. But. You hire. Consultant to come in and tell you what you should do with your economic development plan. A lot of what I saw in this plan sounds good. A lot of it is boilerplate, typical kind of stuff that you'll see that comes out of this. I didn't feel it was particularly antagonistic towards the tourism industry. I read the book. I think people understand that. I think, yeah, there was something on. I understand the trends come and go. And imagine there's always been animosity towards the tourist. To one degree or another. I've been in tourist towns since the mid-670s when I quit college to go skiing. And they all had their pet nicknames for tourists. All of them. And we all talked about the tourists while they were here, and sometimes always in their back, but often while they were here because we're in the same bars. So I would hope with that. You're there to the extent that the tourism industry. Economic objectives don't work in like, we're not typical or boilerplate. We pride ourselves on boilerplate, and that's why all of these people are here. All these people, many of them say different things, but all of in ski area track, which is why we're here. We're in the best ski area as far away from this place as we can get. Now we need to do things to continue to do. I should say diversification of business is not a bad thing. It's not evil. I think it probably needs some definition of what we're talking about when we're doing this. I don't see this as never to open the door to widespread strip development. And if that's what it does, then we take it out. But if we're really talking about is projects like Mike Rogan has been working on for years on his property out here, which is a medical research facility that generates additional businesses. Our area. That's something we should be looking at. How do we help incentivize that to take place? Because that does for us that generates incomes that have the taste and can afford downtown that our downtown has become. And I don't think we're back away from where our downtown has become because out the door. You know, we price ourselves out of the $15 t-shirt shops. And so we have to be realistic as well. Zoning too restrictive, we could all talk about that forever. Limit the number of businesses downtown, number of galleries or coffee shops or restaurants or anything else. That doesn't sound American. We have a thing called gallery nights because we have galleries or what you consider. That's an attraction to our major. Coffee shops, coffee, bars, from that, you know, restaurants, you know, we don't argue about those things. Personally, I like what's happening in some of the downtown businesses, the types that are ourselves, the one that don't really have a tan mentality. Which based on what we all do, we all frequent them or not. I'm not generalizing everyone, but there's some That's a problem, folks in town. Neighborhood commercial, again, I don't think it's the antichrist if it's done correctly. If it's dependent on highway traffic, and you're not gonna get neighborhood commercial past no parking spaces. I think neighborhood commercial much in the most desirable neighborhoods in our town, because it's walkable to their houses. Right, and they want those businesses downtown because they can walk to them. And what is wrong with having someone out by the soccer park? We're straight could have someplace they could walk to as well. I don't think there's anything wrong with that. We're in new development that's coming up, and it's planned. I'll sit down with it because these are kids. And I thought I should go as far as I can, but continue the process, and my board will be weighing in at some point or another, whether it's here or report council and Toronto. There I am. Thanks for the good work.
Thank you, Kevin. All right, anyone else from the audience here? Dave, do we have anybody?
Yeah, we do.
online? All right,
Nathan, you want to unmute your mic and give your comment?
Sure, Nathan Dugan, 937 Kalispell Avenue. I was kind of confused about kind of why the economic development chapter was causing so much strife, but I think a couple of the comments that I heard earlier kind of illuminated that for me. And what I heard was that it's really about if we have more non-tourism jobs in Whitefish, if we have more services that locals can use on a regular basis, that maybe a few more people will live here, and maybe we'll have some more homes for those people that might be built a little bit more efficiently than Whitefish is currently built out. And so when I think about that, I guess it makes sense to me. I think it's unfortunate that maybe this chapter is being used to kind of prevent that down the line, but I can't say that I'm really surprised. I would caution the committee, and Alan's presentation flew by, so I don't know if this is what's currently in there or what was the suggested edit, but there was an aspirational paragraph that got read out at one point, and I really would caution the board against adopting language in the growth policy that is meant to be inclusive, and that, Whitefish wants everybody to be able to live here, blah, 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 while stacking the entire growth policy with policies that are ultimately exclusive, and make sure that that will never happen. So something to keep in mind as you're drafting this and considering some of those amendments. Thanks.
Nathan.
Hey, Richard, I'm gonna unmute your mic. You have a comment? Now's the time. Hildner?
Did say he was in Yellowstone, so there's that.
There it is. Your mic's muted.
Okay, am I still muted?
Now we can hear you now.
Okay, finally, thank you very much. I'm going to be very brief. I'm going to be somewhat specific. But I'm speaking, Richard Hildner, Whitefish, and I'm speaking for myself as well as Flathead Families for Responsible Growth. And I urge you to, strongly urge you to accept the revisions, many of the revisions submitted by the Heart of Whitefish. These comments are not only substantive, but also closely aligned with the current and projected economic development of our city. I'm worried about the constraints imposed on local control by the Montana Land Use Planning Act, MLUPA. It's critical that the Whitefish Growth Plan or policy reflect the desires of how our community grows over the next 2 decades. And I'll give an example. In the current draft of the economic development element calls out in Goal 2, Objective J, for consideration of future zoning amendments to allow small-scale neighborhood self-serving light commercial or mixed-use in appropriate areas. The narrative considers Columbia Avenue, East and West 7th Street, Pine Avenue, Armory Road, and portions of Caro, Denver, and Texas Avenues as areas that could be zoned to allow commercial use. In calling out these areas, it now sets the stage for justifying these areas to be zoned as neighborhood commercial. And again, given the constraints of MLUPA, it will be too late for the residents of these areas to object once adopted and the zoning takes place. Now is the time to remove goal 2, objective J. Have any residents, I was just curious, have any residents along these collector streets been clamoring for a brew pub, dispensary, or vape shop in their neighborhoods? Has anyone bothered to actually walk those streets and ask the residents what they want? Again, I urge you to give serious consideration to the amendments made by the Heart of Whitefish. And thanks for your time.
Thank you, Richard.
Is there anybody else online that has a comment? Please raise your hand. I can unmute your mic. Brian, you are unmuted. You have to unmute your mic yourself, but Brian Schott.
Can you hear me?
Yes.
Yes, we can.
Yeah, I'd just like to reiterate that comment. I think neighborhood commercial is a dangerous road. I think I'm nervous about what the south end of Central Avenue is starting to look like. I mean, you'll talk to residents of Whitefish about boarded up shops downtown in the 80s, and we got to keep the downtown business core super strong and avoid sprawl at all consequences. So thanks for your efforts on this. This is amazing. It's a great community that we're visioning this forward, but let's keep downtown Whitefish as strong as we possibly can. Thank you.
Thank you, Brian.
A doctor, unmute your mic and you can speak. Ed Doctor? I think that's Ed Doctor. Just says Ed, but.
Got it.
All right.
I think.
You hear me?
Yes.
God, you think it'd be easier in 2025. So, I hear the arguments on both sides, and I think I get it from both sides. The downtown people want to keep downtown because they're afraid of the money, just like, we missed out on a bypass 25 years ago because of the money. I've lived here 25 years. I haven't been downtown in 10 years. It's just too damn busy, way too busy. And I'm not the only local that says that. And I don't want to see huge stores down on the strip, but also I think you have to. Look how busy Jersey Boys is. I mean, it's busy. I'm pretty busy. And the off season has sucked this year for sure, but it's not like it used to be. We have 10,000 people living here now. There's people supporting these businesses, but I just can't really agree with jamming everything downtown. The parking's horrible. I mean, I heard somebody, I think Rhonda said we had 17 clothing stores. Well, in 25 years, I've never shopped at any of them. Not saying that I don't like these people, but it's very expensive. I miss the Shopko, but there's a reason the Shopko left. They couldn't make enough money. So maybe the kind of people, the clientele in our town has changed. I grew up skiing in Sun Valley and Jackson Hole and watched these towns go from vibrant nightlives to just art galleries and fine dining. And that's exactly where we're going. I heard in Alan's report that a lot of people said they don't want this to turn into Aspen or a place like that. Well, that's probably too late unless we do allow some commercial in residential areas. I mean, I know I heard Richard say, people don't want dispensaries or vape shops, but if people aren't going to put things in if they don't make money. you know, and that's the truth. I mean, economically, you know, business will drive if businesses survive or not. If you guys look at downtown and the kind of stores we have, a lot of these are hobbies. These people don't need to make a lot of, they're not like me. You know, I've got to make a lot of money. I do have a mortgage still. Some of these businesses don't have mortgages. They're going to be in business a long time. They're going to be, you know, they're sustainable. Ones that aren't, you know, maybe they won't. But I guess I'm just saying is, as a longtime resident that really used to love going downtown and really love this town, having not gone down there for about 10 years, because it is a big pain in the ass. It just is, you know, and I'm not sure where the people are coming from that don't see that and are say they're losing money or it's not busy enough and they're worried about it not being busy. Well, I'm going to tell you, you know, they might have worried about that in Aspen in the 70s. They might have worried about that in Jackson in the 80s, but that shit's over. And I think it's kind of over here too. You know, the prices are very high. We're not going to get a whole lot of normal people living here unless we do have some sprawl, unless we do have some different kind of housing and some commercial development. So, you know, basically just as a longtime local, I definitely see both sides. But, you know, I think if we make arguments that we have 17 clothing stores downtown, you know, I love Trek to death, but I can't go in there and pay $240 for a pair of jeans. Maybe everybody else can. But like I said, I miss the Shopko, but we don't have a Shopko. Maybe because people didn't want $20 jeans. You know, I don't know the answer. But thanks for your time, and I'll be following along with this.
Thank you, Ed.
Anybody else that hasn't commented online? Raise your hand. Angela, you can unmute your mic. Angela, do you have a comment?
I do have a comment. Sorry, I'm not a member of the public. I just am staff and attending virtually. Sorry about that, you guys. I would have loved to be there. I just have one very brief comment, and it relates to what Mary Flowers brought up about Alan's characterization of the comments that he received. And I think that's misguided, truthfully. I think Alan's done a great job, and summarizing these comments, of course, is not easy. But I really just, I want people to respect the staff, and I think Alan's done a great job. And I think to say that he is somehow biased in summarizing the comments that he received is very misguided. So that's all I wanted to say. Thank you.
Thank you, Angie.
Any other online comments? I think that's all.
So the next section is board discussion of draft chapter. We've been doing this for almost 2 hours now. Should we take a couple of minutes before we jump into that? Okay, so it is 7:54 right now. So let's come back and at 7:58, take 4 minutes. Does that work with everybody?
Probably not. It's
Couple of minutes. Oh, sorry, Alan, you can have until 8 o'clock.
Watch out for the speed limit.